And you're very welcome back to another WedPrep podcast delivered to you by WeddingSuppliers.ie. You can find this podcast on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen or watch your podcasts. We are on site today in the beautiful Ballymagarvey Village, and we're here with Muireann. How are you, Muireann?
I'm great.
It's so nice to be here. I've been in this room plenty of times, and it's such an amazing ballroom. And when you walk into it, you just get this sense of, a wow factor to it. How long are you here now in Ballymagarvey?
I'm here. This is my 11th year here.
11th year. So you know the place inside out.
I do, yes.
And it comes with such a big package for a couple that are looking to book a private and exclusive venue. Yeah. I suppose that's an important part to start off, and that if a couple books Ballymagarvey, it's theirs for the day. Yeah, so I think that one of the biggest things about us, or one of the biggest draws for couples, is that we are a private and exclusive venue. So we host one wedding a day, and the venue is the couples for the day. So, and when you say when it's just one day, I mean, with the day twos that are becoming popular now as well. Are they allowed to go into the next day for a day two, or can you orchestrate that? Because you're quite busy.
So we
here,
offer a variety of packages split into kind of peak and off-peak months. So we do offer a pre-day package or a post-day package, and just on certain dates then throughout the year. So it just depends, I suppose, on the availability and also at the time of year you're looking at.
Okay, cool.
But there's definitely, I can see that hugely at the moment.
We came up here to the gates, and John, who's behind the scenes here, behind the cameras, John was saying to me, wow, because it was his first time here, and we came up the avenue, we've seen all we don't want to give too much away either, but the chandeliers that are in the trees. Yeah. So, when you come through the gates of Ballymagarvey, if we start with the ceremony first, because we know now that there's a trend of people that want to get married on site as opposed to the traditional, church venue. So if you were able to give us kind of a ratio, would you find most people would have their civil ceremony here?
Yeah, so I definitely think since I started, as I said, 11 years ago, it would have been a very different, you would have seen something very different, where you would have probably had maybe 30% civil ceremonies. Now I'd say that is close to 80%, 80-20 or 70-30
that's some
maybe.
Shift, isn't it, really?
Some shift, for us, it's great. So it has led on to different things for us. So we have a prep room for the bride, for the couple in general. So we have two prep rooms. The bridal prep room is a lovely space you saw actually earlier today.
Yeah, and we'll be showing some offcuts of the bridal of that area where they can prep. I was just in it. It's such a big space actually. Isn't it?
So we've an area for both, and then that leads into so they get ready on site that morning, and then they have their ceremony, which is in the middle of the ceremony room. So it keeps the day a lot more contained. Your guests are arriving, they're going to the ceremony. And you're not losing them along the way to the shops and the pubs on the journey.
That's a big thing. They used to stop off at the local pub on the way, or go home for a sandwich or whatever.
And then we're lucky in that there's lovely local churches nearby. So a lot of couples, we get couples from all over. So if we have a couple from Sligo or Cork, they're not going to get married there. They're going to get married in a local church if they are having a church wedding. And then they come to...
And do you see much of that? Would you see people logistically trying to stay local, or the attraction to Ballymagarvey, say for people coming over from the States, and then even people from all over Ireland, seeing the attraction to Ballymagarvey, like what you just said, people would be coming from
we get
Cork.
A lot of maybe international couples, a lot of expats, so you might have couples that are settled in Australia for the last few years, but they'll come home for their wedding and that sort of stuff. We get from all around the country really. It's funny sometimes because you could have a really local couple that say, God, I've driven by these gates for years and I never knew what was inside the doors. So it's kind of like a couple said to me recently, it's like when you live right beside Newgrange and you never go and visit it, but you'll have people coming from all over.
I'm one of those people, that's
exactly.
mad.
Me too.
And if you go back to, I suppose, where Ballymagarvey started off, I mean, originally I think it was a mill or something.
It was a Georgian house. It would have... So we've actually a whole history book on this. We put a lot of work into it, but it would have been a working mill, village kind of. So it dates back to the 18th century. Vincent Callan then, who's the owner, he bought it in the early 2000s. He always says that naively he thought it was a bit of a project that he'd have done in a few years. Didn't fully understand what it would be until
he didn't even think it was going to be a wedding venue.
Yeah, well, I suppose that he always says when he viewed it, it was obviously in total disarray and it needed a lot of work. Right, so but he felt something very special about it.
Yeah.
But we had our first wedding here in May 2009, so it took from I think 2002 to 2009 to get it, and even from what it was then to what it is now.
Yeah.
It's constantly
evolving.
evolving.
A few times that I have been coming back and forth, every time I come through the gates, there's something to do. Yeah. So it has been an ongoing project, and no doubt that it hasn't stopped just there. You know?
No, and every improvement we make or everything that we do is done with a wedding in mind. You know, so if we find like that, one thing leads on to another. If there's an increase in the amount of civil ceremonies, what are we missing here? So we do little trips. You know, every other year to kind of research trips, which is great for us as a team. But even just, you always come back with ideas of like, what's the latest trends? What are we missing as a venue? What are couples looking for? You know,
and what do you see, like you're here 11 years, before we move on to the whole multi-factor of what Ballymagarvey is, because when you come through the gates, and I'm assuming that's why it's called a village, because there's so much stuff going on, what would you see over the 11 years of being in Ballymagarvey, the kind of main trends that have shifted?
There's a few things. I think the civil ceremony is probably the biggest one because that affects the whole dynamic of the day. There's smaller things like, you know, I think we used to see a lot more of the traditional things where the couples maybe were doing things because that was the done thing or what you have to do. Whereas now people are moving away from that and making it more about the day that they want to have versus the day that...
and stuff like that.
Yeah, speeches are always a big one because it's the way up of before or after dinner. And you know, we do allow them before dinner, but it's a limited time because you have to take that into account, you know. You don't want to compromise the quality of your food, which obviously we've spent so long building up an excellent reputation for.
Yeah, because
you don't want to delay, you know, as someone has worked with bands, you don't want to delay.
They won't be long.
Yeah.
And then they're 2 hours.
And then a best man whips out a slideshow and suddenly it's like, something that was supposed to be.
But what would your advice be? Would your preference be before dinner for speeches?
I think it really depends on the couple. So if you have an incredibly, like if you're a groom and you're incredibly nervous about making a speech, you want to enjoy your wedding dinner. So you don't want to be feeling sick throughout. I think if they're limited to maybe 30 minutes, it works really well within that time. You could have, you know, everything that needs to be said can be said within 30 minutes. You have your guests are going to pay attention for 30 minutes. Beyond that, they're just going to think, I'm hungry, I want my dinner. You know, I'm ready for things to begin.
And then I suppose people, you know, as we get on, if you're drinking, you might drink too much, and then people are getting bored if the speeches are afterwards, if they're going on for too long.
Like we will always work with the couple and try and meet their needs and what they want their day to be. So equally, you have couples that don't do speeches at all, that incorporate maybe some poems or something into their ceremony or their own vows, and that kind of acts as speeches. So that, you know, the non-traditional giving gifts during the speeches, you know, the bunches of flowers and all that, like this, all that sort of stuff that maybe graced before dinner. They're all little things that would have been done for the sake of being done. Whereas you don't see that.
There's no one real particular format now. Sure, there's not.
It's
like whatever, anything goes.
Exactly. And like even the post, the pre-day, the post-day, that used to not be a thing at all. It was all just the wedding day. The focus was on the wedding day, whereas now the post day is definitely an extension of the wedding day. People put a lot more thought into that. We definitely have couples that when they're considering what they want from their days, for some people the post day is just as important as the...
And for the day two thing, as we call it, the day two, because a couple of years ago there was no such thing, you know, and now weddings are 3 or 4 days, you know. But, and can you accommodate for the day two?
We do, So we have a lovely post day package actually. It's a much more intimate package than the wedding day. It's much less informal, and it's really nice. It's a nice way of winding down from the wedding, but you can build onto it to make it as, you know, if you want to go crazy again on the second day,
people bring in music, and we had a podcast with someone from a trad band, Kaylee Cottage, and day two that's what to do. So we include an acoustic session as part of it, but what we find is they'll do our acoustic session earlier on in the day, and then trad bands are really popular then. Okay, great.
So it's a different feel. Really.
So let's go back then to what's on site. Okay, so you come through the gates of Ballymagarvey, you have a look at the venue, and I think anyone that comes through the gates would simply fall in love with it. Ultimately, you know, we're in the ballroom now, everyone can see what it's about. And we'll have little offcuts of the ceremony. So if you wanted to talk about the ceremony room, I know you mentioned earlier about the mill, the old mill.
So the ceremony room is the mill loft, we call it. So it's a lovely kind of, it has great character, kind of like in here, it has the old stone work. And and it photographs really well, so it's really nice for couples. And we also have an outdoor space which is over by our prep room, so Gwendolyn's garden. If you get the weather, yeah. And you know, generally we find if we get a decent summer, couples will change their mind and say, you know what, we'll go outdoors.
Yeah, and so it's great having that flexibility, because I know a lot of couples would say, you know, it is nice being logistically being in one place as opposed to logistically moving from a church, you know, to, and obviously people still want to have a nice church wedding because it's nice ambience, acoustics. And I suppose when you go to a venue then, you know, the worry is, how's it going to feel, how's it going to look? But with your ceremony room, as you said, it has the stone walls, so you have that kind of nice atmosphere as well.
Yeah, and it's not kind of like the banquet hall as well. It's not like an empty function room that you need to turn into a pretty wedding room. Like so, even within the banquet hall,
there's no work in it for you.
There's no work, and like what we try to do is take the work off the couple, take the worry off the couple. So, a couple want to come in and know that A, we're experienced in what we do, and that B, they'll have very little to do in terms of as much or as little as they want, I suppose.
Least amount of stress as possible.
Least amount of stress as possible. So like planning a wedding is stressful enough because you've so many things to juggle, you know. So whatever stress we can take off the couple in terms of organising from the venue point of view, that's what we do.
And can we talk about the plans then? Like you have your pre-dinner area, which is the Manor House, is it?
Yeah, so the Manor House is where so regardless of whether you have a church or a civil ceremony, your drinks reception
the gathering is there.
Takes place in the Manor House.
With
so
the big lovely white piano.
With the lovely white piano, so we have like a conservatory area, a kitchen area, so it has a lovely homely feel, and like everyone, you'll feel that from excuse me, the second you walk through the doors there.
Yeah, because that's not something you see in most kind of reception, kind of lobby areas, if you want to call it. In the Manor House, it's like you're in the house. There's a sitting room. There's a kitchen, and then you have the white piano.
We have a little tagline where we say, "Make our house your home." So the idea is that everyone feels it when they go in. Some couples even dot photos around the Manor House so that like it's a talking point in each room. So you have a couple of little sitting rooms, you have a dining room, the conservatory and the kitchen, as I mentioned, which opens out into a lovely walled garden. So again, if you have a nice day, it'll kind of overflow outside. And then there's also 9 bedrooms in that house. So that is where generally the couple's family or wedding party will stay as well.
And it's the bridal suite in the main
So we don't
house.
have a specific bridal suite. They choose whatever room their preference. So they're all decorated differently. So they'll just choose whatever. The Osborne room in the Manor House is probably our most popular choice.
Right, that's so when they see that's the one they want.
But we've a couple of new rooms actually within the courtyard in Lisa's Secret Garden. That are really modern. They're like nearly a total different take on the rooms in the Manor House, and we've some couples that recently have stayed in them.
And am I right in saying there's a snug bar?
Yes. So that again, that's kind of suited to the little trad idea. So you have a little what we call the snug bar, so it's the black line bar, and you'd see if you're in it, you'll see why it's called a snug bar.
Might help there for a few points after this.
Yeah, you might go up there. And generally guests will go in, so with all our packages we'll have food and drink included. You'll have that circulating then through the house, and then guests can go and get additional
And just
drinks.
then with your package plans, do you have a kind of a set plan that you would put in front of a couple when they come through the gates of Ballymagarvey? Say, look, there's A, B, C and D, or can you make it bespoke, or what's the general?
So again, kind of what I was saying about trying to make it as stress-free for couples as possible. With the packages that we've developed, we try to include everything that you would almost expect to have included. Like there's no point in offering a package and say, right, now you have to add on your own drinks, or now you have to add on additional food. We want to maintain a certain standard, so we will include the food and drinks that are included for your drinks reception in the Manor House. We've a menu, obviously the couple choose their menu options. But they're done kind of seasonally, so we have a main package that's split into peak and off-peak months, and there's a couple of different options depending on the numbers.
And do the packages vary in pricing for midweek and seasonal, so February against November, as opposed to July, obviously, because there's more demand in July and stuff like that.
So like summer is probably still always the time that people. Christmas for us is a massive one because we go full on.
Yeah, I know. The Christmas trees are out there, the lights are up. Yeah,
I laugh. It gets earlier and earlier every year. I felt like even this year,
I felt like this year?
I was like, are we late for Christmas this year? Because it just felt like.
So your Christmas is even on a personal level, your Christmas starts in October or whatever.
I go home from here in mid-November saying, right, we have to put the Christmas decor up.
But you know what the beauty about that? I was walking around at the store a couple of years ago. I think it was Brown Thomas or somewhere, and it was October, and I seen all these Christmas. And I was going, oh my God! But I was here actually, it could have been very early November and the Christmas lights were up, and I didn't have that same feeling. I had a feeling of, wow, even though you're 2 months out from Christmas, it was just the way the lights were displayed.
Well, we always actually have, so we go heavier on it at Christmas, but we always have, as you said, when you're driving up the drive, we have a chandelier tree. There's a couple of things within the courtyard that started as Christmas decorations, but then they became a fixed part of the courtyard because couples loved it so much for photographs. So we've little things on the trees
that's out there, isn't it? It's a very famous shot where couples go out.
Chandelier tree,
and just under, and that's. I mean, you don't come in and out of Ballymagarvey without getting that, and photographers kind of know that as well.
So generally there'll be different points through the day, but after dinner, while the band are setting up, a couple will normally go out and get there.
And then coming on to the banqueting hall, obviously for the evening reception then, I mean, normal times, everybody congregates in the pre-dinner area up in the Manor House, and then you kind of usher them down here and get seated. And like we've touched off the speeches, whether that's before or after. In the menu process there, what kind of offerings do you have there? Would you kind of recommend or kind of push someone towards, look, this is a popular one, or how do you sit down and orchestrate that for someone, you know, on a menu basis?
Yeah, so so generally they'll spend a couple of hours in the Manor House for the drinks reception, then we'll bring them down to the banquet hall for dinner. The banquet hall for us is probably the wow factor. Even at open evenings, like I always say, if there was just a little camera in the corner there, it would be the best marketing you could ever do for a venue. Because you get, like, brides would walk in and just start crying at the room, you know?
Yeah, because even though they've seen it on an open day or something, it's completely different.
And feedback we get often is when they see it in person, oh, it's so much better than I expected. And I always love to hear that, because I think if you know, sometimes with Instagram, you can look at these videos and you can say, oh my God, this looks incredible. And then you can be a little bit underwhelmed. So I always love to maybe have less of an expectation and then exceed that expectation when they see it in person. So obviously the decor in the banquet hall is like a wow factor for people. But then, as I mentioned, with the food, like we have really spent a long time building the reputation that we now have for food, and we're really lucky to be in that position. But it's, you know, there's so much work from the entire team that would go into that.
How much of a team are behind?
So there's 100 staff in total, and that's between all departments. And
that's
really,
phenomenal.
There's so many cogs to make, you know, a venue work. But really, it's the team behind it. And sometimes you see the same faces at the forefront. You know, that's who couples are meeting. Prior to the wedding day, you have a whole wedding planning team that the couples meet. On the wedding day itself, we have our event managers, we have a banqueting team. You've all the people in the background then. You've like a housekeeping team, kitchen team, the bar obviously, or, you know.
Just to keep it all flowing.
So much, but it, you know, all of that adds up to, so when we're talking about that feeling that people get when they walk into the Manor House, like, that comes from the people that are there, that are welcoming you in, and we're really lucky to have a great team that make
and even the
that
courtyard out here, I have seen it before. I don't know if you still do it, when the meal concludes and if it's a little bit dark or even bright, you light log.
We have the fire pits. We've lanterns that line the courtyard as you're coming down. So that's done like spring, summer, winter. You know, it's regardless of the time of the year. The same as all the people often comment on how many fireplaces we have through the venue.
You've got a lot.
We've a lot of fires.
We're walking in here and it's like out here in the bar area, out here in the lobby area, there's just all these big open fires.
But that really, again, adds to the atmosphere.
Warmness,
so that creates, like, you know, a warmth, as you say. We also play background music within the courtyard that creates a nice atmosphere. So it's all the little things that you don't necessarily need to point out. But all those things really add up to the feeling.
And for photographs, so for the garden aspect, the outdoor, I mean, do you have an area there where couples can get nice photographs as opposed to having to leave the venue or on the way into the venue? How's the garden set up for stuff like that?
So we've so many photo opportunities through the venue. I'd always recommend, even for couples coming from a church, there's no need to stop anywhere. You know, get to the venue and get your photos taken. Don't go to Newgrange, no.
Even if you've never been there before.
They might, if they're coming from Cork, they might go there on the way. But so like, there is, I don't know if you've gone beyond the courtyard, but once you step beyond the courtyard, we have a waterfall area that's behind the mill loft.
Lovely.
There's a pond up there as well, so people often...
Any fish in it?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of fish in it, yeah. People always say, you know, looking at photos, where's that and where's that? So there's, you know, there's there's so much grounds around Ballymagarvey, so there's plenty of places for photos.
So when you come through the gates of Ballymagarvey, I suppose obviously depending, because like on a day-to-day basis, probably in the summer months, would you be doing a wedding per day or every second day?
Yeah, you would, yeah. And like that, I suppose, like I say, I don't like to say it's all we do, but because we're only a wedding venue,
you're not corporate,
we don't have anything else to fit in. So, so whether, you know, you might have a couple that have booked a wedding and a post day, and then we'll have a wedding following that. So, but we're all, you know, that's why we have the team behind it.
Yeah.
Because
and in fairness, on that point, you know, you do hear some people saying if a venue has too many weddings, or my friend got married there, I think that's a really positive sign for someone. It doesn't matter, you know, if your friend got married or your sister or brother got married in the same venue. The fact that you're flowing and you're able to turn it around so quick, it means ultimately you know what you're doing. Yeah,
and we get a lot of that. We get a lot of, my sister got married here, I got married here, my sister got married here. I mean, me personally and my sister personally, we did. So.
And how did that go for you?
Yeah, good. Well, I suppose I didn't work here when my sister got married here, but like that, we were really local and like had never come in. But there's a massive difference between, you know, she had a Christmas wedding, I had a spring wedding, so it can be the same venue with a very different feel. So we have loads of guests even that say, God, I've been here so many times, but they'll always take something different away from the day or notice something different in terms of decor or menu or whatever they take away.
Because there's a constant change in it. And you're multi-award winner.
Yes.
Plenty of awards to back up the proof. You won the Wedding Suppliers Award as well this year, 2025. So how did that go? How did you feel after that?
Great, it was really good. It's I suppose, like we were talking about it earlier, it's such a good night in terms of just bringing the industry together and chatting to people that you see probably on a daily basis without ever getting
passing.
Passing, exactly. So it's great from that point of view, but the icing on the cake is obviously to take home award as well. So
any tips before we finish up? What would your top 2 tips for couples, just in general, while they're kind of looking for a venue? What would you say would be 2 or 3 things? You know, I hope I'm not...
No, not at all. So I think I can see sometimes with couples, when they've visited a few venues, it can nearly get to a stage where they're getting a little bit stressed about, because ultimately the biggest decision you're going to make is booking your venue, because that leads on to everything else. It's very cliche to say don't stress the little things, and the venue is the big thing. So you are going to put the most thought into that. I would always recommend visiting maybe a max of 4 to 5 venues, like have a clear idea on what you want. So, you know, if you're absolutely ruling out, I do not want I want an exclusive venue, pick 4 or 5 exclusive venues. Because the more you go to, it's as good to know as what you don't want as what you do want, you know. And often you need to visit the place to get a feel for it. So I would say, you know, pick a couple, pick maybe 4 to 5 max, and don't go beyond that. You know, I've met couples that...
And if you kind of know you kind of want a private and exclusive venue, stick to that.
Exactly.
Don't try and go outside of that.
The other thing I would say is, it's often I find I could sit with a couple that, you know, they want an intimate summer wedding, and they might visit here at Christmas and say, well, actually, I'll have a wedding of 200 at Christmas to, you know, stick to what you imagine the day to be.
Can we actually speak about that? I should have asked you that question. In the banqueting hall, what can you seat?
So we can seat up to 220 here in the banquet hall. Yeah.
And what is the minimum?
So we do packages minimum of 50. So again, when you see this banquet hall set up for 50 people or 60 or 70, you think, how would you fit 220 in? But it's just in terms of table layouts, we change things around.
And even if it's a more intimate wedding of 50,
you can still fill out the room to make it look full, you know, so it suits the numbers regardless.
Well, look, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much, Maureen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, talk to you.